Behind the pillar. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in April. Emma had just come home from the bakery, still smelling faintly of vanilla and sugar, her hands marked with traces of flour that wouldn't wash away. Between bills and circulars, the cream-colored envelope stood out, heavy paper, gold lettering, her sister Lily's handwriting. Lily was getting married. Emma traced the embossed letters, feeling the weight of it. The invitation was everything she expected: traditional, expensive, elegant. Lily's world had always been this way: polished, perfect, enviable. There was a note inside, written in Lily's looping script. Emma, it would mean everything to have you there. You're my only sister. Emma should have smiled. Instead, she felt the old ache, the quiet reminder that in her family, she was the afterthought. The last time they'd been together was Thanksgiving. Emma had brought a pumpkin cheesecake she'd spent 2 days perfecting. Lily had brought store-bought pie. Their mother, Marie, barely looked at Emma's dessert before placing it at the far corner of the table. Lily's pie looks lovely, so classic, she'd said. That was how it always went. Lily glowed, Emma tried, and their mother applauded the glow. Still, Emma said yes. Of course she would go. Sisters were supposed to show up. Weeks passed in a blur of work and preparation. She bought a soft blue dress, modest and elegant. She asked for time off, much to her boss's annoyance. She rehearsed small talk for family members she hadn't seen in years. When the day came, the resort gleamed in the summer sun: manicured lawns, glassy lake, white chairs lined in perfect symmetry. The kind of place that didn't belong to Emma's world. She arrived early, hoping to find Lily. Maybe she could help, maybe they could share a moment like old times. Instead, she found laughter spilling from a bridal suite crowded with women in matching robes. Lily sat in the center, radiant, surrounded by champagne and attention. Emma hovered in the doorway. "Hey! I thought I'd come early, maybe help out." Lily looked up briefly, then smiled, a smile too polished to be real. "Everything's under control. Go find your seat, okay? The ceremony's starting soon." A bridesmaid giggled. Emma felt her face flush. She left quietly, closing the door behind her. Outside, she looked for her name card among the rows of chairs. Her stomach twisted when she found it, the very last row, behind a decorative pillar that blocked her view entirely. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. She almost left. But pride rooted her to the spot. She would not give them the satisfaction of her absence. When guests arrived, she stayed in her corner, unseen. Her mother passed, glowing in champagne silk, escorted proudly to the front row. She didn't look back. The ceremony began. Music swelled. Lily walked down the aisle on their father's arm, breathtaking in lace and silk. From behind the pillar, Emma caught glimpses, the edge of Lily's veil, the groom's back, the shimmer of applause. Then she noticed someone beside her, a man, younger than most guests, sharp suit, quiet presence. He looked as out of place as she felt. He caught her eye and smiled softly. "That was quite a view," he murmured when the ceremony ended. "Spectacular," she said dryly. "I especially loved the back of the guy's head in row 8. He laughed, easy and warm. "I'm Jack. I'm guessing from your prime seat that you're someone's least favorite relative." "Emma. The bride's sister, actually." His eyebrows lifted. "Her sister?" And they put you here. Apparently, I clash with the wedding aesthetic. Jack studied her with quiet empathy. Their loss. Come on, cocktail hour's starting. Face it together. She hesitated. He offered his arm. Strategic alliance. You'd be saving me from small talk. So she took it. The pavilion overlooked the lake, glowing gold in the sunset. Waiters glided by with trays of elegant appetizers. Jack stayed close, keeping her company as laughter rippled through the crowd. So, he said, sipping his wine, what's your sister like when she's not starring in her own wedding? Emma smiled faintly. Perfect. Or trying to be. She's the daughter everyone brags about. And you're not. I'm the one who works in a bakery instead of an office. Who lives alone? Who doesn't fit their idea of success? He nodded thoughtfully. Being a pastry chef sounds harder than it looks. Creative, demanding. I respect that. My mother doesn't. She calls it working with food. Family can be complicated, he said gently. That's diplomatic, for my family's a mess. They laughed, and for the first time that day, Emma relaxed. When dinner was announced, she found her name again, this time at a table in the corner of the ballroom, near the staff door. The hum of important people filled the room. Jack appeared at her side, holding his place card. I'm way over on the other side. This is absurd. He pocketed both cards. Follow my lead. Pretend you're my date. Jack. Trust me. He led her to a table near the front, Gregory's colleagues, judging by their talk of stocks and clinical trials. The woman beside them smiled. And you must be Jack's girlfriend. He's been hiding you. Jack grinned. She likes her privacy. Emma stared at him, speechless, but his hand on hers under the table steadied her. For the rest of dinner, he kept her included, visible, seen. When speeches began, she braced herself. Gregory's father spoke about achievements and pride. Her mother followed, talking about Lily's grace and determination, every word polished, perfect. She didn't mention Emma once. The absence was louder than any insult. Jack's hand found hers again. He didn't speak, just held it, a quiet gesture that kept her from breaking. Later, when the dancing began, he asked her to join him. You don't have to keep pretending, she said. I'm not pretending. Dance with me. The music was soft, slow. He moved confidently, leading her through the rhythm. You know, he said quietly, you're stronger than you think. Strong doesn't always feel good. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to make you real. Outside, fairy lights shimmered in the garden. They slipped out for air. The lake reflected the stars. I shouldn't have come, Emma admitted. I thought maybe this time would be different. But I was wrong. Jack leaned beside her on the railing. Family isn't always the people who raised you. Sometimes it's the ones who show up when you're hiding behind a pillar. She turned toward him. You're good with words. He smiled. I'm better with actions. Before she could ask what that meant, guests poured out for the sparkler send-off. Jack handed her one. They stood in line as Lily and Gregory ran through the glowing arch, picture perfect, laughing. Emma's chest ached. Grief, pride, resentment, love. As the car disappeared into the night, silence fell. Jack turned to her. "Can I walk you to your car? I'm staying here tonight." "Me too." They walked along the garden path, the air cool and heavy with the scent of jasmine. She shivered, and he slipped off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. "You don't have to." "I want to." She looked up at him. "Thank you. For tonight. For all of it. Just bearable. Better than bearable." He smiled. "Good. Because I'd like to see you again, away from wedding chaos." "Why?" she asked softly. "Because you make me laugh. Because you're real. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since the ceremony." He kissed her, slow, careful, electric. When he pulled away, she stood in the quiet, dazed and warm in his jacket. That night, her sister texted, "Thanks for coming." It meant a lot. Emma stared at the message, unsure whether to laugh or cry. The next morning, she met Jack for breakfast by the lake. The world felt softer, calmer. He listened as she talked about baking, about her frustrations, about how invisible she'd felt for so long. "What if," he said, "you stopped waiting for their approval? It's hard. They're my family. Then build your own kind of family." They talked for hours, and before they parted, he asked to see her again. Over the next weeks, he kept his word. Calls, texts, dinners. Real connection. No pretense. When he invited her to a business dinner, she didn't know until they arrived that his client was one of Lily's new in-laws, Patricia, the same woman from the wedding. Patricia greeted her warmly. "Emma. What a delight. You're a pastry chef, right?" By dessert, Patricia was asking if Emma could create pastries for their company's upcoming gala. Emma agreed, tentative but hopeful. It was only later that she realized Jack might have had a hand in orchestrating it. When she asked, he didn't deny it. "I didn't plan the offer. I just made sure you were seen. You deserve that." And he meant it. Weeks passed, full of laughter and work. The gala approached. Emma poured herself into her craft: chocolate raspberry tarts, honey lavender macarons, lemon panna cotta. Each creation a quiet rebellion against every time she'd been overlooked. When the night came, the event glittered with wealth and admiration. Her desserts shimmered under soft lights, guests marveling. Then she saw Lily and Grant across the room, her mother beside them, perfect as ever. But tonight, the attention wasn't on them. It was on Emma. Patricia took the microphone. "Before we continue, I want to thank the person responsible for tonight's incredible desserts, Emma. Your talent turned this event into art." Applause filled the room. Emma froze, overwhelmed, then caught Jack's proud smile. Across the crowd, Lily's expression flickered, surprise, then something like respect. Later, Marie approached, smile taut but words forced out. "Congratulations, dear. I suppose your work has turned out well after all." Emma smiled politely. "Thank you, Mom." That night, when the crowd thinned and the light softened, Jack found her near the dessert table. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like being seen for the first time." "You always deserved to be." She looked at him, this man who'd found her behind a pillar and made her visible again. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel lesser. She felt whole. Their world moved forward from there, quiet mornings, shared laughter, flower-dusted hands, and plans for a life built not from approval, but from choice. Emma never sat behind a pillar again. Because she'd learned that sometimes, all it takes to step into the light is someone who believes you belong there. And maybe, finally, she believed it too. Time had softened the sharp edges of that night. Months had passed since the gala where Emma's name first shimmered under lights instead of shadows. The bakery had grown busier, so had her heart. Jack was still there, steady, patient, quietly protective in ways that didn't smother her, but strengthened her. They built a rhythm together: coffee before sunrise, laughter over spilled sugar, walks along the lake where the air felt like prayer. Yet, as life often insists, beauty came braided with trials. Success drew attention, attention drew comparison, and comparison drew whispers. Her mother's approval was polite but distant, the kind that felt more like formality than pride. Lily, now married into a family of prestige, sent rare messages: saw your name in the paper, congrats, always punctuated with a heart that looked cold on screen. Emma tried not to care, but the ache of old invisibility never quite vanished. One evening, she was closing the bakery when Jack arrived, his tie loosened, eyes tired. "Long day?" she asked. He smiled wearily. "Meetings. Numbers. The usual translation of chaos." She untied her apron and came around the counter, wiping a streak of flour from her cheek. "You need dinner." "I need you," he said softly, and the world quieted around those words. They ate simple food, laughter sprinkled between bites, yet beneath the comfort, something unspoken lingered, a distance that neither wanted to name. Jack had been distracted lately, phone calls ending when she entered the room, thoughts drifting mid-conversation. A week later, she found the truth. Not betrayal, at least, not in the way people expect. It was his father. Sick. Months, maybe less. Jack had been traveling, managing care, shouldering grief in silence. When she confronted him, tears already in her voice, he simply said, "I didn't want to weigh you down." She took his face in her hands. Love isn't light because it's easy. It's light because we carry it together. He broke then, the walls, the practiced composure, the quiet suffering, and she held him as if faith itself were a physical thing, warm and steady. The following months became a lesson in compassion. They visited his father in hospice, where the air smelled faintly of lavender and inevitability. Emma brought pastries, small offerings of sweetness to a man who could barely eat. She sat beside Jack's mother and listened to stories about his childhood, the boy who fixed clocks, who believed everything could be repaired if you cared enough. When his father passed, the world tilted but didn't collapse. The funeral was small. Emma stood beside Jack as the pastor spoke of endings that are only beginnings. Later, when the guests had gone, they stayed by the grave until stars began to appear. "I don't know what comes next," Jack murmured. "Then let's walk into it together," she said. Grief, like love, doesn't vanish. It lingers, reshaping what it touches. But their bond deepened, quiet, resilient, built on faith rather than fantasy. By autumn, Emma's bakery had become a haven. People didn't just come for pastries, they came for comfort. She'd begun a tradition, a kindness shelf, where anyone could pay in advance for someone else's treat. The small wooden sign above it read, "Grace tastes better shared." Jack watched her one afternoon as she handed a cup of cocoa to a shivering child whose mother whispered thanks through tears. "You've turned sugar into something sacred," he said. She smiled. It's not about sugar. It's about hope. Winter came early that year. Snow clung to the streets like a hush. On Christmas Eve, the bakery was quiet, closed for the night. Emma lit a single candle by the window, her small tradition of remembrance. Jack joined her, wrapping a blanket around them both. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said. "That I used to believe love had to look perfect. Like Lily's world, big, bright, flawless. But it's not perfection that lasts. It's kindness. It's forgiveness. It's faith that even broken things can still be beautiful." He kissed her forehead. "You make broken things holy." Outside, the town's church bells began to ring, carrying warmth into the cold. In the new year, they faced new tests, a business offer that could change everything. A luxury chain wanted to partner with Emma's bakery, expand it into multiple cities. It was everything she'd once dreamed of, and everything that might take her away from the simple, quiet life she loved. Jack encouraged her. "You've earned this." "But what if success makes me someone I don't recognize?" "Then I'll remind you who you are," he said. She took the leap, carefully, prayerfully, opening a second location months later. The work was exhausting but meaningful. Still, she made sure to keep one day each week sacred, Sunday their day. They drive nowhere in particular, windows down, laughed aloud. On one such drive, through golden fields humming with late summer, Jack pulled over at a small chapel they'd never noticed before. A white steeple, peeling paint, a sign that read Faith Hill Church, founded 1928. They wandered inside. The pews creaked. Sunlight streamed through cracked stained glass, painting color onto dust. Jack knelt, then turned toward her, not nervous, but certain. "Emma," he said, "I found you behind a pillar once, hidden, unheard, beautiful anyway. Since then, every day has been light. You make ordinary life feel like grace. I don't want a grand proposal. I just want a lifetime of mornings with you." Her eyes filled. "Yes," she whispered. He smiled. "I didn't even ask yet." "You didn't need to." They laughed through tears. There was no audience, no choir, no perfect lighting. Just two souls promising to keep choosing kindness over pride, patience over proof. Months later, they married in that same chapel. Lily attended, quiet and watchful. After the ceremony, she approached Emma with trembling hands. "You look happy. I don't know if I ever said it, but I'm proud of you." Emma smiled, genuine and forgiving. "Thank you." For the first time, they hugged without rivalry, sisters, not competitors. Years passed softly. The bakery thrived. Their love matured into something calmer but deeper, less fire, more steady flame. They learned that love is not about never hurting each other, but about always returning, always mending. On their anniversary, Jack gave her a small wooden carving, a pillar, smooth and polished. "A reminder," he said, "of where it all began. And how far you've stepped into the light." That night, as rain whispered against the windows, Emma looked around their home, photographs, warmth, the faint smell of cinnamon. She thought about everything, the wedding, the gala, the grief, the laughter, the days that tested them, the mornings that redeemed them. She whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Not for the absence of storms, but for the presence of love strong enough to weather them. Her story had begun behind a pillar, unseen, uncertain, waiting for someone to notice. But it hadn't ended there. It had bloomed into a life where kindness was the foundation, forgiveness the roof, and faith the light that filled every room. And when she glanced at Jack, asleep, peaceful, one hand resting near hers, she smiled through tears and thought, "This is what love looks like when it grows up." Years slipped by quietly, like pages turning themselves. The bakery bell still chimed every morning, sunlight still kissed the glass, and Emma's hand still smelled faintly of butter and faith. But time had softened everything, her movements, her voice, even her dreams. She and Jack had built something more than love, they had built a life that felt like prayer. They weren't chasing perfection anymore. They were keeping promises. The town had grown around them, new faces, new buildings, yet the bakery remained a constant, a sanctuary of sweetness and second chances. People came for the pastries but stayed for the peace. Emma had become something of a local legend, though she never believed her own myth. To her, she was still just the woman who once sat behind a pillar and learned how to see herself. Jack had found his own rhythm again too, running his small consultancy from a quiet office downtown. His hair had started to silver at the temples, which Emma secretly adored. "You look wiser," she teased once. "I look older," he replied. "Same thing," she smiled. They never had children, not because they couldn't, but because life led them elsewhere. At first, there had been sadness, then acceptance, and finally, a strange, full joy in being parents to the people around them, to employees, to neighbors, to the lost ones who wandered in and needed a place to belong. One of them was a young woman named Grace. She'd walked into the bakery one cold morning, shoulders trembling under a thin jacket, eyes lost. Emma had offered her coffee, then a job, then a kind of family. Grace became their apprentice, their laughter, their reminder that nurturing doesn't always come from blood. Jack watched the two of them one evening as they closed up shop, Emma teaching Grace how to fold pastry dough, her hands gentle, her voice soft and sure. Later that night, as they walked home hand in hand, he said, "You've turned that bakery into a church." Emma smiled. "Flour and forgiveness. My two sacraments." But time, faithful and unforgiving, had its own plans. It began with a cough that lingered, a fatigue that didn't fade. Jack brushed it off at first. "Stress," he said. "Work. Weather." Then came the tests, the waiting rooms, the sterile smell of hospitals. Words like chronic, advanced, treatment, spoken softly but landing hard. When they came home from the appointment, Emma sat by the window for a long time, hands clasped around her mug. Jack came behind her, resting his chin on her shoulder. "We'll get through this," he said. She nodded, but tears betrayed her. "I can't lose you." "You won't," he whispered. "I'll just change forms. Love doesn't leave. It just learns new ways to stay." And so they fought it, together. Chemotherapy. Prayers. Laughter in hospital corridors. They made jokes when they could, cried when they couldn't, and held each other through every in-between. Grace ran the bakery in their absence, keeping the ovens warm and the kindness shelf full. The community responded with tenderness, cards, casseroles, prayers tucked into baskets. Emma was humbled by the very love she'd spent her life giving away. One spring evening, when the world smelled like lilacs and rain, Jack asked her to take him to the lake where they'd first met. They sat on the same bench, the water rippling like memory. "Do you remember the wedding?" he asked, smiling faintly. "How could I forget?" You made me laugh when I wanted to disappear." "You were never meant to disappear," he said. "You were meant to shine quietly until the world noticed." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "You were the one who noticed." He took her hand. "You gave me faith again. Before you, I believed in plans. After you, I believed in purpose." The sun dipped low, gilding the lake in gold. Emma rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "If love could stop time, this would be forever." Jack kissed her hair. "It already is." He passed that summer, gently, peacefully, at home, a candle extinguished by the same hand that lit it. The bakery closed for a week, not for mourning, but for remembering. When Emma reopened, she placed a single chair by the window, Jack's favorite seat, and kept it there, not empty, but full of memory. People came in quietly, some in tears, some in gratitude. Grace hung a small wooden sign above the chair, "Kindness lives here still." Grief reshaped Emma but did not destroy her. It deepened her, like rivers carve valleys. She began writing letters to Jack every Sunday, words she never mailed but read aloud as if heaven had a mailbox. Months turned into years. She grew older, silver-haired and serene, her hand still deft, her heart still bright. Grace took over the bakery fully, but Emma came every morning, sitting in the corner with coffee and a smile. One snowy afternoon, she found a young couple arguing softly near the counter, tension written on their faces. Emma approached them, not to intrude, but to offer warmth. "You remind me of us," she said kindly. "Whatever it is, choose love over pride. It's the only choice that keeps giving back." They listened. And maybe, somewhere deep down, they understood. That night, Emma walked home alone but not lonely. The world glowed with quiet faith. When she reached her porch, she looked up, snowflakes swirling like tiny prayers, and whispered, "We did it, Jack. We kept the promise." Inside, she found an old photo, the two of them at the lake, young and laughing, the sun turning their silhouettes to gold. She smiled through tears and whispered a final line to the love that had defined her life. "Thank you for finding me behind the pillar." And in that whisper, she felt him again, not as memory, but as presence. The air grew warm, the light soft, and for a moment, time did pause. Outside, dawn began to rise. The town stirred awake, unaware that somewhere, love had quietly completed its circle. The bakery bell would ring again tomorrow. Grace would unlock the door, the ovens would glow, and kindness would continue, the kind of legacy that doesn't fade, only multiplies. Because once, a woman hidden behind a pillar had chosen love over bitterness, kindness over pride, faith over fear. And that choice, small, stubborn, sacred, had changed everything. Years later, the morning light still poured through the bakery window, soft and golden, as if heaven itself stopped by for coffee. Grace stood behind the counter, arranging a tray of croissants, her movements graceful, precise, like Emma's once were. The old sign still hung above the register, "Grace tastes better shared." She never changed it. She couldn't. Outside, the world had changed, new cars, new buildings, people with phones glued to their palms, but the bakery remained untouched by time. Its walls still smelled of sugar and sunlight, its corners still whispered laughter. A small framed photo sat by the window, Emma and Jack, smiling, hands dusted with flour, joy caught in motion. Every morning, Grace whispered a small hello to them, like a prayer. She missed Emma fiercely. When the old woman had passed, the whole town came out, hundreds of people who'd once walked through that door to buy pastries and had left with something more: hope. They'd shared stories of Emma's kindness, of her listening ear, of her gentle advice that always began with faith and ended with forgiveness. Grace had inherited the bakery, but what she really inherited was Emma's way of seeing the world, tenderly, courageously, through the lens of mercy. One chilly morning, a young man came in just as she was unlocking the door. He looked lost, the kind of lost that doesn't come from not knowing directions, but from not knowing where life goes next. His clothes were neat but tired, his eyes rimmed red, his spirit heavy. "Sorry, we're not open yet," Grace said kindly. He hesitated. I just needed somewhere to sit for a bit." Something in his voice, fragile, trembling, made her step aside. "Then come in. Sit. Warm up." He thanked her softly and found a seat by the window. Grace poured him coffee and placed a croissant beside it. "On the house," she said. He blinked. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to," she smiled. "You look like someone who needs kindness." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I lost my job last week. My apartment's next. I don't know what to do anymore." Grace sat across from him, hands folded. "I know that feeling. I've been there." He looked up, curious. "I walked in here once, years ago," she said. "Cold, scared, ready to give up. And a woman named Emma handed me coffee just like I did for you. She told me that kindness is the only thing that multiplies when you give it away. She was right." He smiled weakly. "Emma. She owned this place before me. She changed my life." Grace stood, fetched a notepad, and wrote something. "Here," she said, tearing the page. "It's an address. A friend of mine runs a local community program. They can help you with work." He took the note with trembling hands. "Why are you doing this?" "Because someone once did it for me," she said simply. "And she told me to keep passing it on." He stared at the steaming cup, then at her. "Thank you." Grace smiled softly. "Come back tomorrow. There'll be another croissant waiting." When he left, she looked at the chair by the window, Emma's chair. For a moment, she could almost see her there, silver hair glowing in the sunlight, eyes gentle with eternal knowing. "Still doing your work, aren't you?" Grace whispered. The days turned into weeks, and the young man, whose name was Ben, returned, slowly rebuilding his life. He started volunteering, then working part-time, until one morning he brought flowers for the counter. "For her," he said, nodding toward Emma's photo. "And for you." Spring arrived with its forgiving light. Grace decided to restore the small garden behind the bakery, the one Emma and Jack had once tended. She planted basil, thyme, and cherry tomatoes, just as Emma had described in her stories. She even added a small white bench where the two of them could have sat and watched life bloom again. One afternoon, while trimming the vines, she found something under the soil, a small tin box, rusted, hidden deep. Inside was a folded letter in Emma's neat handwriting. Grace's hand shook as she opened it. "If you're reading this, it means time has done what time always does, moved forward. I want you to know that love doesn't end when we do. It continues in the way we treat each other, the way we show up, the way we choose grace when pride feels easier. Keep this place kind. Keep people fed, not just their hunger, but their hope. And if ever you doubt yourself, Remember this, faith begins the moment we stop seeing miracles as rare. Tears fell onto the page. Grace folded the letter carefully, pressed it to her heart, and whispered, "I promise." The years went on, and the bakery became more than a business, it became a refuge. Mothers brought children. Lonely souls found conversation. Strangers became family. On Sundays, Grace closed early and invited anyone who needed company to share supper at the long wooden table. She'd say, "This is what Emma taught me, love is not measured in perfection but in presence." And people listened. And hearts healed. One autumn evening, a girl about 18 came in with her mother. The girl was shy, withdrawn, her eyes carrying the same uncertain light Emma once had behind that wedding pillar. Grace recognized the look instantly. She handed the girl a small tart. "First one's on the house. Consider it a beginning." The girl smiled faintly. "Why?" "Because someone once gave me one," Grace said, "and it changed everything." Later, as Grace cleaned up for the night, she looked around the bakery, at the photographs, the warm lamps, the chair by the window that never felt empty. She knew Emma's spirit still lived there, in every act of kindness, in every small miracle that walked through that door disguised as a customer. When she locked up, she stood for a moment outside, watching the lights glow through the window. A quiet peace filled her. Emma had taught her that faith wasn't about seeing the destination, it was about trusting the road, even when it curved out of sight. And now, the road was hers to walk, steady, humble, radiant. Inside, the candle by Emma's photo flickered gently, as if agreeing. The world outside went dark, but the bakery stayed lit, a single, stubborn star of kindness in a city that never stopped rushing. And somewhere, perhaps just beyond what eyes could see, Emma smiled. The circle was complete.